Willkommen zu Max und die Supply Chain Helden, deinem Unternehmer-Podcast zum Thema Einkauf und Logistik im digitalen Wandel. Interviews und Erkenntnisse von und mit Profis aus dem Bereich Supply Chain Management, ganz ohne Beratermission. Ich bin Max Meister und Familienunternehmer in dritter Generation. Ja, hi. Willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Max und die Supply Chain Helden. Heute eine kurze Folge auf Englisch mit dem Brian Snow, seines Zeichens General Manager von der Abteilung Global Services für einen Lieferanten von uns, die Firma Parker. Der Sound ist etwas suboptimal, aber ich denke, es lohnt sich trotzdem da ein bisschen zuzuhören, weil es geht um das sogenannte Parker Tracking System. Eine Technik, mit der man Bauteile von Parker und anderen Herstellern etikettieren kann und so weltweit für die Ersatzteilversorgung garantieren kann. Ich denke, das Thema ist spannend, weil hier viel Musik drin ist, vor allem wenn man das langfristig kombiniert mit Themen wie RFID-Tags oder ähnlichen. Und ich denke, ihr solltet einfach mal reinhören und wünsche euch viel Spaß. Wie immer freue ich mich über Feedback. Macht's gut und bis bald. Ciao. Okay, so perfect. Today here is Brian Snow from Parker in Cleveland. Great having you. So, before I start, maybe you can introduce yourself, who you are, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Brian Snow. I work for Parker Hannafin. I've worked for Parker for the last 23 years. More recently, I'm responsible for our services business in Parker. And really what that means is, we're a 100-year-old company that's a large manufacturer of many different hydraulic and pneumatic components. But we build services around those components to keep our customers safe, keep their equipment up and running, and to help extend the services that our distributor partners can offer out in the marketplace.
Okay. Can you describe how these services around the products today work?
Yeah, so a good example might be around hose assemblies. Hose assemblies, that carry hydraulic fluids or different types of media do tend to wear out. They're a wear item because they're flexible and because of some of the very harsh environments that they can be asked to live in while they do their work. They do wear out, and they have to be inspected. They have to be checked. They and sometimes have different certifications that they carry with them in order to meet industry requirements. And so a service around that might be to offer those inspection services, to go into factory floors, as a distributor, maintenance or tech team, and they could do the inspections on those products for our customers out in the marketplace and make sure that the equipment is up and running as it should be in the application.
Okay, so I don't know how the situation is in the US, but do these inspections mainly do distributors for you at the end customers, or is it a combination? Or
yeah, it's mostly distributors that would do that work today. We could go into an engine plant, we could go into a steel plant. In some cases, we would go into a construction site where they have many different manufacturers, types of equipment, where they understand that they have a dozer or a digger, but they don't necessarily always understand we always call it the minutia, the small items on those applications that tend to lead to failures, whether it's a clogged filter or a hose that might be abraded or twisted and might lead to premature failure of an application or a piece of equipment. Those are the things that ultimately fail and cause downtime, as opposed to, the quote-unquote dozer. The dozer never really fails. It's something small. It's a bearing. Parts. It's a filter. Yeah. It's a something small that's causing the problem.
Okay. Do you have many end customers that use products probably from all of your segments or from all the different parts of Parker, or how's the situation?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Obviously we have many customers that may use a single line of product, but we also have others that would use, Parker's broken down into 6 operating groups, which is typically centered around products. We do have one group that is our Aerospace group, and that tends to be focused around the aerospace market. And so all the products are geared towards aerospace. But you can imagine, again, a dozer or a piece of equipment, a hydraulic press, where they would use filtration and cylinders and valves and actuators. And so all of the breadth of product comes into play when we're looking at services. It could be an accumulator where it needs to be recertified after a number of years to meet those industry standards that are in place today.
Okay, when you have a customer that is using extra services around the product, how is he able to use or leverage the data you create with all the products?
Yeah, good question. So, if you think about a born-on date, right, that's one of the things that's maybe the easiest to consider. So when a product is born and it's shipped out of one of our factories, we certainly record that data, and we record it in a system we call our Parker tracking system. We also would house different attributes around that particular product. Maybe it could be a bill of material, it could be repair items. If that product were to be serviced out in the field, we would record the service event in our Parker tracking system. We would record the results of it, and then we would know each and every time it was touched by a service technician what the results of that inspection, what the results of that service were. If that item were ever to be replaced because it could no longer serve in the application, we would then track the second item in that application. So they would have two PTS IDs or Parker Tracking System IDs associated with that application, and we'd know that one lived from point A to point B, and then the new one picked up at point C and lived to point D.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So life cycle management, those sorts of pieces of information become available once you do that.
Okay. So I have a second question, but probably another one I have to ask first. Sure. Can you describe how the Parker tracking system is working in the whole supply chain?
Sure. So when Parker manufactures a product, and today a large amount of our data comes with our hose assemblies, again, because they're kind of a high wear item. They tend to be a very good candidate for traceability. We are beginning now to roll this out across our enterprise, meaning all of our groups and divisions within Parker. And that's an ongoing effort. We're getting more and more and more assets out in the world today. We've got about 35 million assets worldwide today that we track. So it's a pretty considerable database. And we've been doing it for about 10 years. So it's not new. And again, all of our factories would put in bill of material information around each asset, born on date, where was it manufactured, who assembled it, were there any testing or certificates that were done specific to that item, were there any general documents, it could be an assembly guide, it could be a user's manual. We'll attach those documents to that record. And then when we ship them out of the factory, then those digital documents just travel right along with those physical products that get shipped out into the world. And we've got several different forms of interface. It could be a mobile device interface. It could be a computer interface that allows users to then access that data and use it for their applications and their business systems.
Okay, so I think about some customers where we always have some issues with documenting the whole process. So maybe this could be an advantage. And I'm quite sure when our listeners listen to the podcast, then we are quite short before we also use Parker tracking system. Yeah. One other question is, what additional services do you see for the end customers using Parker tracking system?
Yeah, I think that we've got several things that come into play in terms of inventory planning because we now know how long things typically last in different applications. We can help them plan for maintenance events, and so we can also then tell them, if you're going to do a maintenance on a machine, and that machine might have 75 or 100 different components, we can then pull the entire bill of material and all the subcomponents of that machine in advance of that work. And we can make sure that from a supply chain standpoint, we have all the products on hand, on site, very well organized and kitted, ready to go, so that when that work happens, it's a very short duration of downtime for the customer. We had one example where we actually did an oil and gas rig, an offshore drilling rig, and it had thousands of component parts that were on it. Once we digitized and understood all of those items on the drill rig, the first time that was a lot of work. The second time we saw that application, we were able to pre-make, pre-organize, pre-label, and get all of that staged up on the key site, so that when this very intensive capital and rig shows up on the key side to do the work, it's there for the most minimum amount of time as possible.
Do you learn with the customer and the items he needs, or do you really go on site with your partners?
It depends, but we definitely find that most of our customers are worried about their equipment, cranes, top drives, punch presses, lathes, whatever it is. They have limited knowledge around some of the individual components. And so what we will do is we'll come on site with a distributor partner. We'll help them best understand that equipment and all the subcomponents that are required. And then we'll PTS tag those things that we can when they're in the application, so that we're best prepared to do the maintenance when that time comes. So it's really a partnership.
Okay. What combination do you see with the Parker tracking system and potential IoT or Internet of Things applications?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I kind of view the Parker tracking system as the VIN plate, right? A lot of times I'll use automotive examples as an analogy. So each of our cars has a VIN plate that attaches all the physical metadata about the asset. That's essentially PTS. IoT is all of the condition-based things that are happening in that particular product or in that application. Because of the way we've structured PTS and because we've planned for service events and inspections, we can take triggers or signals from IoT devices and we can feed those into a system that will then trigger an inspection event. Maybe it's out of sequence of a standard planned event. So if we said, hey, we want to inspect this item in 6 months, based on just time, we could then augment that plan based on an IoT signal that says, hey, this is operating out of condition or out of norm. We should inspect it sooner, right? And so then IoT kind of becomes an override to a standard calendar or days planning event. If you
will. But until today, you have two different systems. So you have the IoT world and the PTS world,
Correct.
And it's not in one system combined.
That's correct. However, each IoT device carries with it a PTS ID. So every IoT instance, every IoT smart sensor is PTS ID'd so that we know and we can understand this is an item that is a Parker item. In the future, those signals will then get passed back into a PTS system to take action.
Okay. So for us, or for how I see supply chain, would be also very interesting to use this data also in combination with probably stock levels of distribution in the area where the customer is working to really to guarantee that he has enough supply.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So interesting topic. Another thing. So you are now working for more than 20 years for Parker.
23 years. It's amazing how quickly it goes.
Okay, perfect. And what do you think is the biggest success of Parker until today?
I think that I definitely think that the breadth of product line that we have allows us to get into many applications, and that's certainly something that we're very proud of. The other piece is the distributor channel. Like we have an immense amount of physical footprint with our channel partners, with our distributor partners. And that, again, allows us to leverage that breadth of product line to get it globalized out in the marketplace. And so when customers move from one country to another or they add an additional facility or plant, they can be rest assured that there's going to be Parker representation there to help them just like they had in their home country or in their home location. So we've got lots of customers that are adding facilities, it could be in the same country and just in a different state or a different city. But they find that there's a Parker representative, Parker distributor there to help them nonetheless.
Yeah, not far away usually.
Exactly.
Okay, so you are situated now in Cleveland. You always stayed there, or where are you from?
I actually started with our tube fittings division in Columbus, Ohio, which isn't too far from Cleveland. And then I spent a bit of time with Parker in Seattle, Washington, in the U.S. I was calling on one of our direct OEM customers. And then for about the last 15 years, I've been back in Cleveland.
Okay. Yeah, this is also the place where we met.
Yeah.
And so probably one of the last questions. I've seen that on LinkedIn you're interested in analytics and growth tactics in this area.
Yeah.
What are the biggest learnings for you in your daily life?
Yeah, I think that we're continuing to get better and better at this. We're looking for areas where we have voids in the map, in the physical map. So where are replacements of our products taking place, and where are they not? Right? Where do we have good coverage, and maybe where do we not have good coverage, or where do we have partners that are taking advantage of the technologies that we have to offer, and where could we go spend more time and help close in those holes in the map, if you will. Again, one of the things with the Parker tracking system that we like so well is when things leave our factory and they get replaced by our distributor channel partners out in the world, we can see how long they lived. We can see where they traveled, right? Where did they get replaced versus where did they initially get shipped for a factory first fit application on an OEM piece of equipment. So it's very interesting data that comes around just being able to track and trace those events.
Okay, so there pop up two questions in my mind. So the first one for me, and I'm quite sure you don't know the data at the moment, but it would be quite funny to see how many items from Parker are probably produced in the US, and then shipped to Germany. Then there are machines built and then probably go back to the U.S.
Exactly. The thinking is exactly spot on, right? I don't know that I could tell you what that information looks like, but it's for sure something that we're interested in as well.
Okay. And the second one is I've been to a distributor also in the U.S. for Parker, and when they show the map of their development of the branches, then you can see the interstate routes. And he was mainly following the interstates of one state. Do you see a trend that this is still important, or is it changing
to follow the interstates?
To really try to increase the regional footprint of distributors in today's world?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is an optimal density of distribution, right? You want enough to cover the geographical space, and that changes based on a city, right, or a rural area. In a city, you might be able to cover an area that's much, much smaller just because of travel time. So you might have to have more locations. Where in a rural area, people may be more accustomed to having to travel a little further distance, but because there's less traffic, it doesn't take as long.
Yeah.
And so there is an optimal sort of footprint. I think in some parts of the world, we're definitely in a much better position in terms of coverage than in others. Certainly as we sort of go east into Asia, we've got more open areas for us to continue to grow. In places like the U.S., where it's a very mature area, there's certainly less opportunity for us to put new pins on the map, as I like to say.
Okay. And do you have the feeling that even in the US, it's important for the end customer to have branches close by?
I do. I think that we're in an interesting time where you can buy many things on the internet. And I think about my own personal life and how much transactions that I make online today, and it's staggering compared to even just a couple of years ago. So certainly those things are going to influence our business and they're going to impact us. But many of the applications that our customers have and that our distributor channel partners work in do require a bit of technical expertise, and I don't believe that that's quite there yet in some of the online supply. Certainly you can key in a part number and you can probably get it shipped, but really getting some of that deep technical knowledge and assistance that you would get from a distributor, I think is still very, very required today. And I think having our physical footprint where it is today is wonderful for our customers. I think they lean on that pretty heavily today.
Okay, yeah, this is music to my ears, so I hope this continues that way. One last question, and my listeners are used to it. So, what was your last heroic deed?
So that's a very good question. I guess I would probably have to say it's probably a two-part answer. My oldest daughter, she just turned 18. We just sent her off to college, off to university, and so that was a very difficult event. Just kind of letting her leave the nest, but probably my heroicness of that was comforting my wife as she let go of her oldest daughter.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. This would be probably the same with me. A little bit of
consoling, so, yeah.
I maybe have 7 more years, but this will be also difficult for me.
It's difficult.
Yeah, okay, fine. So thank you very much for the short talk. It was very nice having you.
Thank you, Mac.
I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thanks. Good.
Perfect. Thanks.